Simile and metaphor are examples of figurative language. Figurative language is language that goes beyond the literal meanings of words. So why do writers use figurative language such as simile and metaphor? The simple answer would be that figurative language is in our linguistic DNA. It is a technique that is embedded in the way we communicate and is used extensively by every single one of us, every single day. Metaphors slip off the tongue easily and often unwittingly, and in fact I very naturally used one in this sentence before I even realised it. In everyday language, we often use widely recognised metaphors that were originally used many years ago, but have become a standard fixture in our vocabulary through repeated and widespread use. The verbs to snuff it, meaning to die, to be fed up, meaning to be disgusted and bored, and to fall in love, meaning to go from a state of not loving someone to a state of loving someone, are just a few examples of metaphors that are so common and widely understood that we probably don't realise they're metaphors at all. Writers can't just rely on these bog-standard metaphors, though. If they did, their writing would become boring and cliched. They need to create their own, and by doing this, engage their readers by providing rich and vivid descriptions through combining images in new and interesting ways. Metaphors enable you to see the world through the eyes of their creator. Stephen King, a well-known writer of horror fiction, puts it another way. Metaphor enables us to see an old thing in a new and vivid way. Writers want you to see the cloud in the sky the way they or their characters see it. They want you to understand the issue the way they understand it. They want you to feel something is eerie rather than tell you that something is eerie. You may have heard of the saying, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." In other words, a single image can communicate more than 1,000 words ever could. Simile and metaphor are a kind of shorthand which provide a mental picture which taps into the reader's pre-existing word associations, knowledge, experience and emotions without having to spell it all out, by linking one image or idea with another that share certain characteristics to provide a whole new way of looking at it. Metaphors and similes add depth, complexity and originality, if done well, to writing. Simile and metaphor are extremely useful as they can reveal physical information, communicate features of a character's personality, create a mood such as tension or humour, communicate the writer's themes, opinions and emotional state, explain an abstract concept by putting it in concrete terms, make the reader think more deeply about a topic, and allow the reader to connect on an emotional level. So how do you recognise a simile or a metaphor? Similes are much easier to spot than metaphors. A writer creates a simile by linking two different images or ideas with the words like or as. The two different images remain distinct from one another. They are only similar in that they have characteristics in common. They are not the same. She stared at him with eyes like burning coals. Here, the word like immediately signals to us that we are dealing with a simile. A metaphor works in a similar way, although the writer is not saying that the two images or ideas are like each other. He or she is saying that they are each other. They are one and the same, even though in a literal sense they cannot possibly be. For example, her husband is her sunshine. Rather than two images or ideas having properties in common, the properties from one image are transferred or projected onto another. This creates a much more powerful image than a simile. Metaphors can be a bit harder to spot, as they can take on a number of different structures and have several subtypes. Personification, pathetic fallacy, anthropomorphism, and zoomorphism, to name only a few. Similes and metaphors have a three-part interrelated structure. The writer has something that they want to describe, the tenor. He or she chooses something, the vehicle, which has a number of features or attributes, the ground, that they wish to lend to the tenor. Let's start with the simple metaphor. Her husband is her sunshine. Here, the writer wants to describe what this lady's husband means to her. So husband is the tenor. The writer has chosen sunshine as the vehicle, but has given no other information as to the ways in which they are similar. So we need to work out the ground for ourselves. What we need to ask ourselves now is, what features or attributes does the sunshine have that the writer wants to borrow to give to her husband? Sunshine is warm, brings light to darkness, and allows living things to grow. So these are the features that are being lent to her husband. Of course, these properties are concrete physical properties. Her husband isn't warm in the sense of temperature, for example. Once we have transformed these physical properties into abstract personality characteristics, we can see that the writer has painted a portrait of a man who is warm and loving, who gives her joy and hope, and who is very nurturing, which allows her to flourish. Let's now return to our first simile. She stared at him with eyes like burning coals. Here, the tenor is eyes, and the vehicle is burning coals. No other information is given, so we have to work out the ground for ourselves. The image burning coals suggests extreme heat and danger. Once we have transformed these concrete physical properties into abstract properties, we can infer that the woman is staring at him with intense fury and ferocity, and that there is imminent danger. Let's look at a slightly more complex metaphor. This is the second line of Alfred Noy's 1906 poem, The Highwayman. We already know from the first line that it is a very windy night. He continues, "The moon was a ghostly galleon, tossed upon cloudy seas." We can see that the moon is the tenor, as it is what the poet is describing, and a ghostly galleon is the vehicle, as it is the image that the moon has been paired with. The poet has developed the metaphor by also including the ground, tossed upon cloudy seas, to describe the way in which the moon appears to move in the cloudy sky. The vehicle and ground need a little interpretation to get a full appreciation of Noy's image. If we think about a ghostly galleon, what features does it have? A galleon was a sailing ship in use between the 15th and 18th centuries, and so was no longer in use at the time the poem was written. Words that I associate with ghostly are white, unearthly, insubstantial, supernatural, eerie, mysterious. Tossed upon suggests turbulence, instability, and danger of shipwreck. The seas here obviously relate to the sky. What kind of seas are they? We already know that they are turbulent from the verb tossed. We know there is cloud. Clouds tend to be white, as is the foam on the top of breaking waves on a rough sea. Once we have projected the properties of a ship being tossed about on a rough sea onto a moon in a cloudy sky, we can see that the writer has painted a portrait of a moon which appears white, insubstantial and eerie, which comes in and out of sight as it is momentarily hidden by clouds in a turbulent and stormy sky. This is one of a number of very striking, tense and dramatic images which start this poem. We are made uneasy by the reference to ghosts, and that, along with the turbulent weather, perhaps foreshadows some human drama with a supernatural element to come. The reference to a ship which hadn't been seen on the seas for over 100 years at the time the poem was written helps to effortlessly place the narrative of this poem in its historical context, as galleons and highwaymen were contemporaries of one another. So as we can see, this metaphor does much more than merely provide a physical description of what the moon looks like. It also creates a mood, a setting, and an historical context, as well as evoking an emotional response in the reader. Sometimes the writer just presents us with the tenor and the ground, and we have to work out the vehicle for ourselves. Take the following image. The wind came howling through the trees and threw itself at the door of the cottage. Here the wind is the tenor, as it is what is being described, and howling and threw itself are the ground, as these are the properties that are being transferred. We have to use our powers of interpretation to work out from what they are being transferred, though. The vehicle seems to be some kind of wild and savage beast who is enraged, full of bloodlust and out of control. By linking the wind in this way to an implied living creature whose intent is to harm, rather than describing it as what it literally is, i.e. a random weather event, the writer has created a narrative where there is a vicious and concentrated attack. What we get, therefore, is a heightened sense of drama and tension as we wonder if the cottage and its occupants will survive. So, in summary, simile and metaphor create a comparison between two images or ideas. In a simile, these images or ideas are like each other, and they remain separate. In a metaphor, these images or ideas become one and the same. Simile and metaphor have a three-part structure: the tenor, the vehicle, and the ground. The tenor is the image or idea being described. The vehicle is the image or idea with which the tenor is paired. The ground constitutes the properties or attributes that the writer transfers from the vehicle to the tenor. Sometimes the tenor, the vehicle, or the ground may be implied, and the reader needs to fill in the gaps. Simile and metaphor rely on the reader's word, idea, and emotion associations for their effect. In order to analyse simile and metaphor, we need to put these associations into words and comment on the effect that they have on us. We may have to transform the ground's concrete properties into abstract ones in order for the metaphor to make complete sense. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.